Good morning, everyone. 17 minutes after the hour. Welcome to the Sunrise Show. Craig Froenikin is your host, and thrilled to welcome onto the program Dr. Pamela Wible, and she's an MD out of Eugene, Oregon. Her practice is Ideal Medical Care, and her website, idealmedicalcare.org. However, she has done some amazing things, cutting ground, and now she is pulling back the layers of the onion related to mysterious suicide deaths among doctors and med students. And Dr. Pamela Wible, it's great to have you on this morning.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Well, it's interesting, and you are, we're going to get into this because what's happened is parents have found you, parents of students that have committed suicide. They have written letters, and you have written a book, Physician Suicide Letters Answer. I want to talk about that. And now there's being a documentary being put out, the film Do No Harm, and it's the website donoharmfilm.com. There's also a Facebook page, and we posted up, but you were named 2015 Women Leader in Medicine and the Physician's Guardian Angel. But Dr. Wible, talk about these suicide letters. Talk about, to our listeners, what you found and what has happened in the med school.
Well, over 1 million Americans lose their doctors to suicide, so this is a problem for everyone. It's not just a problem within the medical system, but it's certainly being hidden within the medical system, and even the media doesn't like to cover, suicides. And so we've had a long-standing issue back since even 1858 in England. They've noticed that doctors have a high suicide rate. 158 years later, here we are in 2016, very little has been done about this. And it's just a shame because, medicine, we're all about researching diseases and preventing misery in the world, and we're not taking care of our own. So what's happened is that I started talking about my own struggles with suicide as a physician back in 2004.
Right.
And by the way, I will say that these physicians who are suicidal, most of these suicidal physicians are feeling this way as a result of the profession. It's an occupational hazard of the profession of medicine. We see a lot of suffering and death. We're in a highly abusive environment in which medical education still involves bullying, hazing, and huge amounts of sleep deprivation and human rights abuses. And this is obviously damaging to the students who come in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, just wanting to heal people, and also to patients who are on the other end of the ventilator when we're trying to manage their serious diseases, and we're in such a sad state ourselves. So the interesting thing that started happening when I started blogging about this back in 2012 is when I realized that we had lost 3 physicians in Eugene, Oregon. Within 18 months, I was at the last guy's funeral and started counting on my hands how many doctors I had lost under suspicious circumstances, including those men I dated in med school died by quote-unquote accidental overdose, which is a complete euphemism because physicians dose drugs for a living. We don't die by accidental overdose.
Exactly.
So what happened, to answer your question, is that once I opened the conversation on this, the floodgates just went wild, and I got so many letters and blog comments from parents who'd lost their medical students during training, from physicians who'd almost killed themselves during residency and beyond. And it was like my suicide blog that would never die,
In like suicide hotline, doctor style.
Yeah. And so I ended up just, running a suicide hotline for doctors that I had never intended to do this. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I am a survivor of nearly taking my own life as a result of this very sick medical system that we're all held captive to, that is absolutely not working. Our medical education system needs to come up to 2016 standards. We're functioning with a medical education system based on principles from 1647, and it feels like we're in the Dark Ages.
And I posted the petition that's going on. I posted it up on our Facebook page, but you wrote an excellent article. You said, I cried my way through the first year of medical school. Difficult to be happy in a medical culture that condones hazing, bullying, sexual harassment, and teaching by public humiliation. And in your school, there's going to be no end to the filthy jokes that demeaned female patients and classmates. And the lectures, the instructors actually made fun of vegetarians for eating health food. And so once again, just on and on and on, berating, belittling, and making fun of people. And my son just graduated, and he said, Craig, he said, Dad, what happens is they just say, deal with it, buck up, that's it.
Yeah, it's like it was bad for me 20 years ago, and we're going to make you suffer too. This is an example of what happens when we have no mental health care, and you have the wounded teaching people who they're then wounding. The real dangerous problem, it's like Stockholm syndrome, where the abused begin to, somehow think it's normal, and they
because
empathize
they were,
with their abusers. And the problem is most people that are teaching at medical schools and are in power positions in medicine have been injured themselves for decades, and they don't even realize it. They somehow think it's normal, and so they perpetuate this cycle right back onto these 20-year-olds who are coming in with the best of ideals and hopes and dreams to be healers, and they're wounded. This teaching by terror needs to stop.
So that's exactly what's going on. And I had a personal story that was related. He said, what happened? My son said he was in the surgery room, and they asked him a question. And because of the way they worded it, his definition, it didn't quite pass the surgeon's test. And he said, you need to get out. You need to leave. Get out right now. Don't come back, in front of all of the other med students.
Yeah.
How humiliating.
Well, there's no reason for that. This kind of behavior wouldn't work in elementary school. That kind of a teacher that would do this in middle school to a student trying to answer a math problem or something, they would be reprimanded. We let these medical instructors slide right by with their belligerent behavior, and they're actually, they throw scalpels and they do things that are physically damaging to people too. They need to be reprimanded and taught what it means to be a teacher in 2016. This is not the 17th century.
It's really something. I was shocked when I heard all this. Dr. Wible, we've got to get to a break, but we've got Dr. Pamela Wible from Eugene, Oregon on the phone with us. Her medical care practice, idealmedicalcare.org, and there is a movie coming out, donoharmfilm.com, a documentary about this that will release at the end of the year. She's been interviewed by CNN, ABC, and CBS, and a frequent guest on NPR, and we're thrilled to have Dr. Wible with us this morning. You can sign the petition, and we posted that up on our Facebook page, Sunrise on KCMX, and there's some amazing things. But I want to talk about more these suicide letters and these families and these students, and why the best and the brightest, the 4.0 students, the ones that finally make it into medical school, cave because of depression and the fact that they don't feel good enough, and they take their own life. And like you said, Dr. Wible, abuse or overdose of drugs when you know exactly what's going on there. So, all right, let's get to a break and come right back. More on the Sunrise Show on News Radio 880 KCMX. We'll be right back with Dr. Wible. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. 36 minutes after the hour. Welcome back, and we're continuing with Dr. Pamela Wible, MD out of Eugene, and her medical practice, Ideal Medical Care, and her website, idealmedicalcare.org. And she's been recognized and awarded for her incredible way of setting up her clinic. She asked for town hall meetings and for citizens to design their own ideal clinic to offer a great way for healthy practice. However, in that process, she identified suicide amongst medical students and doctors, and there's over 400 a year. And we talked earlier that if all that amount would take out an entire medical school, 400 every year. Well, Dr. Wible, we're continuing, and this is also amazing, is that the medical profession, you've got two issues here. One, the suicide and the victims and the families that are responding from all of this. And then you've also got the lack of response from the American Medical Association and doctors that are in it. And you talked about because they were victimized, they teach through that. And so talk about this letter that you have, one of the many letters related to the results, picking up the pieces after their student died.
Well, I mean, I have so many letters. I've got a book full of letters. I wouldn't even know where to start, but I want to preface this by telling you that I can't believe there's nobody tracking this. Do you know there's no organization tracking these numbers? And the researchers who deal in this issue feel like 400 is really an underestimate because of so many of these deaths are hidden. And that's just the doctors. Nobody really knows the number of medical students that die every year, but I can tell you we had 3 die in the last few weeks that I've heard about. We had 2 doctors die just past weekend, an ER resident, I believe, and a family doctor. I mean, I'm sitting here from my house in Eugene, Oregon, just tracking these in a diary. I can't believe I'm the only one in the country doing it, but I am. People call me and tell me, every week I get multiple people calling me and alerting me that they've lost their doctor or their partner, and it's unbelievable. But here's an example of really how traumatic this is from another letter, which I read at my TED-Med talk. This is out of Philadelphia. Medical student writes, who graduated med school. She writes me, "Dear Pamela, I definitely graduated med school with PTSD. It has changed me forever. I will never be the same again. We had 2 suicides and 1 murder, skull crushed with a bat, and another serving life in prison for murdering a classmate during a delusional episode after not sleeping for a month. Please change medical education. We were so beaten down. It takes a lot for me to cry, but I cried all the time, along with everyone else. But we hid it from each other, of course."
And these med students, they stick together. I mean, obviously it's trauma. In fact, you had one student that said that they had been in Afghanistan, that it was worse. They'd rather be in Afghanistan with IEDs all around rather than being through med school.
Right, yeah.
And coming back to med school is traumatic because you remember all the bad. Now, and then they're just told to buck up. Okay, so the next thing is the costs. I think I don't know what it would be with student loans, but imagine these suicides and what happens to the student loans that are hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I'm not completely sure what happens to them. I think from talking to Kevin Deal's parents who just lost their son 3 weeks before medical school graduation last year. They're in the film. They were planning. Can you imagine? You've got your outfit picked out. You're all ready to go to the graduation for your son, and now you're at his funeral. I mean, can you imagine that?
No, I can't. We're talking with Dr. Pamela Wible, and her idealmedicalcare.org is the website, but she's got a documentary coming out, a wonderful producer out of Los Angeles, and the website for that, donoharmfilm.com. There's also links. She's very well connected with social media and what's happening there. You can find us. We posted up on our Facebook page because now there's a petition with over 60,000 signatures on it. And there's a link for the Do No Harm film trailer, and you're working on completing financing. Is that right?
Yeah, right. We need some donors and sponsors to come forward to help us finish this film so it's professional. We're just about done shooting the film. I think the filmmaker's on another shoot today with some very important leaders in medicine. I'm not supposed to tell anyone, but the presidents and some very big organizations in medicine who, by the way, originally didn't want to participate in the film. But now that they see the momentum that's gaining now, of course, they want to position themselves as the solution, right? So they're coming forward to speak up. But, the proof is in the pudding. Let's see what the action is. Words can only go so far. Who's tracking this besides me out of my house in Eugene, Oregon? What medical organization is going to come forward and start taking this seriously?
Exactly.
That's what I want to know.
And this is not isolated in North America. Studies, it's all across the world.
All across the world. It's even worse in India. The sweet man Varun wrote me, "Dear Pamela, you don't know how thankful I am for your article on physician suicide. I wanted to hug you after reading it. I had a really rough day, 130 outpatients, 60 emergency admissions, and a 12-hour shift. I'm a final-year internal medicine resident in one of the busiest hospitals in India. 2 patients on each bed, 2 lying together on the floor, poverty, misery, pain all around. I've declared 12 patients dead in a day. I just don't feel death anymore, just don't feel human. My uncle died recently. I felt nothing. This profession demands too much from us. I've thought of suicide 1,000 times. The misery is too much for me." We need to start treating our doctors better if we want them to really be able to care for us. They can't be so wounded. And when you track this back to where did the wound start, it started on day one of medical school. These people were normal before.
Talk about that. That was one thing that you said when you went to medical school, that the professor said, if you're going to commit suicide, do it where you don't, what was that phrase?
Like, do it right so you don't become a burden to society.
There you go. Yeah.
Like, aim the gun correctly. Don't just end up in the ICU and make us do extra work on you, basically.
And this is,
that?
And this isn't just one isolated incident. It's over and over and over.
It's over and over again. I mean, and if you listen to some of the words that came out of these physicians' mouths, you would think they're coming from somebody on death row. You know what I mean? Like, these are the kind of things psychopaths say after they murder people, and it's unbelievable.
Now,
really. I heard of a case, an anesthesiologist called me up and told me that he's still traumatized because he lost a student in his class in medical school. She was like a 20-some-year-old, blonde-haired, beautiful young woman who died by suicide. I guess it was an overdose. I don't quite recall. They took her body to the anatomy lab and made the first years dissect her, and that was their classmate. Can you believe that?
No,
I mean, that's the kind of disconnect with reality and humanity. I mean, would you ever? I mean, this is something a psychopath would do. But you know what? I have to tell you, the reason why they do this is they think they're going to make us tougher because you know what? You should be able to do your own mother's autopsy in the middle of the night if you had to on a desert island. You should be able to do your own wife's gallbladder surgery, if you had to in a pinch, right? And so they think they're making you tougher by doing these absolutely inhumane things. I have a friend who finished, she was pre-med actually, married to a physician, and she was in a rural town working as a medical examiner assistant there, doing autopsies, assisting and all that. And turns out one weekend they called her in for an autopsy. Turns out it was like a 20-some-year-old guy. Turns out it was her biology partner, and her husband, who's a physician, told her, well, don't put your emotions on your sleeve or whatever. Don't hang your heart on your sleeve. Get in there and do your job. And she had to eviscerate her biology partner. Some of this stuff makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And you were talking...
can you imagine that? Having to do an autopsy on your friend or a relative? It's not an emergency. They're dead.
Right.
Call somebody in from another town who doesn't know them.
You would recuse yourself and someone else would handle it. Now, Dr. Wible, you were talking during the break. OSHA, one of the doctors from Missouri, said if OSHA picked up on any of the practices in med schools across the nation, what would happen?
They'd shut them all down, including the residencies. These residencies that supposedly have 80-hour per week work hour restrictions, those are broken universally, and if residents speak up, they get kicked out. And if they don't finish their residency, they can't practice as a doctor. And then, it's like this is like slavery. You've got people who are highly intelligent who have been abused chronically for years, and now they're afraid to speak up for their own human rights. And it's just so widespread. That these people, the only thing they can think of to solve this, in New York City, they jump off the hospital buildings. They can't get guns there, so these residents who are so miserable and they can't find a way out of the absolute torment they're in, they start jumping off the roofs of hospitals. We had 2 within 3 days in the fall of 2014. And just another one we had a few months ago. These are just the ones I know about. I can guarantee there's more.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Exactly. Dr. Pamela Wible, it's so great to have you on. We're out of time, but we're going to be following this because like I said, you're looking for funding on the documentary. You're mostly there. You've got a petition signed. You've got 61,000 of the 65,000 signatures. The film, donoharmfilm.com, and Dr. Pamela Wible's website, idealmedicalcare.org, out of Eugene, Oregon. And Dr. Wible, it's fantastic to have you on. Let's do this again real soon because I'm going to be on this like a dog on a bone. Thank you very much.
That's great. And I totally return every email and phone call. So if anyone wants to contact me, feel free through my website.
Very good. It's on your website, idealmedicalcare.org, and you can find all that. There's lots of information. And Dr. Wible, thank you again. I know you're so busy, but it's great to have you on. And this is just a shame for our best and brightest young people. I mean, and then they're treated this way, or it's systemic. Let's
Yeah,
stop the
it is.
systemic...
And patients have everything to gain by being outraged by this and putting pressure on these medical systems and our government and everyone else to basically stop this widespread abuse that's killing these people and providing horrible care for patients. You know, we can't be at our best when we're planning our suicide during your physical exam. How does that work?
No. And the next thing is, supposedly, America, the AMA, they are very concerned about making better bedside doctors.
Well, you can do that by not removing the empathy that they came to medical school with.
Exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Pamela Wible. We've got to get to a break. We'll come right back. Dr. Wible, thank you so much for your time this morning.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too. All right. Oh, man. Riveting. Well, stick with us. We've got a few more minutes and we'll be finished up for the day. We'll take your thoughts as well. 541-772-8255. The Sunrise Show on News Radio 880 KCMX.